Normally I would apologise for saying something inappropriate as we go through, or swearing, but that's already been done this morning, so I'm quite happy. I might cry and I might pee myself at some point as well, so we'll just get that out of the way. So like Christine said, I'm head of service for Medics Against Violence. I originally started back in 2016. I was going to say 2008, I forget what I'm doing. 2016 in Edinburgh. It was the second hospital that we opened in Edinburgh, and it's really, really overwhelming being up here and seeing the team that deliver this service every single day now, and like having the responsibility to speak about it. And also, in case they go, we don't do that, or actually you've not told us that, or shit, we should be doing that. There's also some of our funders in the room, and they'll get to learn. They already know my despise for data. But as I've grown into this role for being head of service, I understand the importance round about it as well now. And Ryan and Kath will speak a wee bit more about that, an awful lot more eloquently than what I will. It's really weird stuff going on there now, isn't there? It's cool. Anyway, so what is Navigator? When did it start? And we'll go through a wee bit about who the Navigators are, who they work with, Navigator in all its forms as well, because we're no longer just the adult service. Eddie and Thomas, who have been with us kind of from almost at the beginning as well. Michelle, I think, is the next one along. Eddie and Thomas have both moved on to other services and have been very warned today. Don't be poaching any of the staff, especially Eddie Gorman, because he's already done it twice and I'm watching him. And there's no transfer fee involved in this either, Gorman. So what is Navigator and what is it that we're trying to do? So it's a hospital-based intervention programme. We're very fortunate that we've been welcomed into 10 of the emergency departments up and down Scotland by the teams that are there. Sorry, so should have said, I've got a tendency to speak really fast when I'm nervous. So is somebody going to tell me if I'm doing it? Slow down. Sorry. And I should have said thanks as well for Father Greg and Caesar and George for staying wakened, because it must be like 4 a.m. where yous are from, so yous are doing good hanging on in there. So, hospital-based intervention programme, and it was realised that there's a unique window of opportunity that we talk about in this reachable, teachable moment, which is actually researched. It's not something that we've came up with that we just talk about. We know that when people are in the emergency department, that we can think about, you know, the whole theme of this conference is about the journey from despair to hope, isn't it? And we know, and we've all seen it in the emergency department, that despair is heightened in there, isn't it? The chaos that people are experiencing that's brought them in there is heightened within the emergency department. But this reachable, teachable moment in this unique environment also allows us to bring in hope when we're there, and to bring in hope and compassion. Some of the themes that we've already heard about this morning is about seeing people for who they are and where they are, and that connection and not that isolation. Breaks your heart when you hear about young people talking about not having a trusted person in their life, isn't it? Some of us within the room have experienced that ourselves as we go along. So patients are focused, and we're very, very patient focused, but we do need to also be aware of the data, and we do need to also be aware of the recording. When I started with Navigator, I think we had 2 bits of paperwork, and it was brilliant. And I thought, because my background was social work after a wee gap in working in music, coming into that after being social work and so kind of paperwork driven, and so, do you know what I mean? 3 strikes and you're out. You've missed 3 appointments, away you go, your case is closed. And that broke my heart when I left social work. I left completely burnt out. I hated my job, hated the people round about me, and I hated the people I was trying to serve and work with as well. I worked in addiction services in the East End of Glasgow, so burnout was pretty common there, wasn't it? I was given the opportunity to get away, but and to heal myself at that time as well, and heal my soul, and come back into working with Navigator through Medics Against Violence, understanding my true compassion for the job. Didn't realise when I left social work that you could be professional and kind. It was one or the other. Do you know, and you were always told, you know, don't show your feelings, why are you crying, you need to be professional. And you think, it's actually, no, it's all right to greet, isn't it? And it's something that we welcome a lot in our office. We've got a feelings chair in the office, the first one broke, like within less than a year, actually. So I had to get a new feelings chair, and it's good just to give yourself some time. Show yourself a wee bit of compassion first and foremost. Compassion's one of the values of Medics Against Violence, and we'll always turn that to ourselves before we turn it out the way. So who are we? Who are our navigators? Navigators, you know, we're not peer workers. We don't employ peer workers, but a lot of our staff have got a shared experience with the patients that we support. I'll always refer to things as shared experience, isn't it? Because we've all got a lived experience. You know, everybody that comes, that walks through life and gets to here will get a lived experience. It might not be in substance misuse or use. It might not be in domestic abuse. It might not be in the perpetrator of violence or the victim of violence. But at one point in this route, at one point in your life, everybody in this room has thought, I don't know how to get up tomorrow. Things are just really, really overwhelming for me. So we all come with this lived experience into it, and it's really important that we treasure that. We never ask our staff to share their experiences, you know, our staff with a shared lived experience, if they want to do that, but we'll value and we'll support them to do it. You know, because it's not just this outpouring into it, no, and it's certainly no any kind of, you know, kind of poverty porn or lived experience porn that we want to be doing. We're authentic and non-judgmental. You know, a lot of the staff, when you get to know them and you get to know all of our own experiences, we're in no place to judge anybody, aren't we? No. Everybody does the best they can with what they've got at that time, and that's what we need to remember, because that's what our patients are doing as well. And it can be really difficult, because our patients are really difficult sometimes, aren't they? And we need to acknowledge that. Nobody can stand up here and talk about the people that we support and not acknowledge that it's difficult and that you feel as though you're kind of going round and round and round in circles. The other thing that we can't not acknowledge when we're up here and when we're speaking about our patients is the patients that we've lost over the years. You know, and we'll always talk about our success stories. We'll always talk about positive outcomes, and we'll always report on that. But we're still a far, far way away. You know, we're no longer the murder capital of Europe, but we're the drug death capital of Europe. And if you look about where those young people are coming from and where those people who are experiencing the drug deaths are coming from, they're coming from the same communities. So something's still no working into it, and it's really important that we click that. If our staff are in recovery from anything, we'd look for them to be a wee period of time as well. You know, the last thing that we want to do is somebody really early doors in the recovery and we start going, there you go, there's a picture unicorn, away and run about in the hospitals, because it's dangerous for them, isn't it? So we need to treasure that. We need to support them, and we'll also support families round about that as well. We're paying attention to their well-being, like we've said. There's nothing better for me when we're paying attention to somebody's well-being and we're investing in their future and we're investing in their professionalism and their training. There's nothing better for me than somebody who comes with a shared lived experience and professional experience, because why can we only be both? You know, I love it when I say I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on X, thankfully, but I love it when I hear about these arguments between lived experience and professional experience, because I've got both. So I don't really know where I fit in that, you know, and I like being a wee enigma and a wee conundrum for people. Anybody who's tried to manage me over the years, and David and Christine, you'll kind of testify to that. So these are some of our staff from over the years. We couldn't possibly not have had Eddie and Thomas up on this, because Eddie texted me last night going, I bet be a picture of me on it. Do you know, and we'll see as we go through, kind of pre-COVID, we had these horrendous skinny fit T-shirts on. And it said on the back, I don't know if you can clock in Thomas's right up at the back outside the QE there, it used to say supporting people away from violence. Because that's how we were originally set up. We thought that that was what Navigator was going to do. Very, very quickly within the first year, we realised that violence doesn't come on its own. And a lot of it was the underlying problems that was coming round about it. Jerry and Rachel, who are our youth navigators, Erica, who is with us today, is in one of the photos as well, that's about to come up. Couldn't get her in round about the youth navigator sign. Alan, who's over in the corner there, I should have found a better picture of him, because he looks as though he's going to do somebody in, doesn't he, in that? And I can say that because Alan and Sharon, our other two regional supervisors, aren't with us today. Eddie, I'll send you pictures of that, Thomas. So thinking in an overview of the programme, and how do we deliver this? So you can see there that since Navigator started back in 2015, we've supported over 10,000 people. And that's the ones that we've got records for. Now, like I said, when I started the early doors in 2017, there was no paperwork. Do you know what I mean? So we've probably supported a hell of a lot more than that. I know myself and Eddie, when we worked in Glasgow Royal, our paperwork was only ever up to date when we were going off on annual leave, so there's probably a lot of other kind of numbers missing from there. That's not how we do things now. It's a partnership programme, and we couldn't do it without partnership, couldn't we not? We've already talked about the need for that connection from the people that we're trying to support, whether it be young people or people coming in through the hospitals. And we need that as services as well. We need that connection. Everybody's always talking on about not working in silos anymore, but we still do it. You know, and a lot of that's got to do with kind of, I'm not going to start banging on about funding today, but it's almost about that, isn't it? I've got my pot of money and it's precious, because people are frightened. They're frightened for the resources and they're frightened for the projects that they deliver. Navigator, when it first started, was actually jointly between the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit and Medics Against Violence, although Medics Against Violence also always had the responsibility legally for employing us all. So I'm sure that gave Christine a couple of nightmares along the way. And our funding just now, some of it's through CORA, some of it's through Scottish Government. Some of it is at present through the ADP, but that's about to change because apparently some of the ADPs have cured drug and alcohol problems in certain towns and cities, but we'll not go into that today either. So as you can see there, head of service, 2 adult Navigator supervisors, regional supervisors, and 1 who's responsible for the youth service. We've recently brought in some lead practitioners. Some of the team that's in the room just now get interviews for being our next lead practitioners on Friday. Enjoy. You'll know how nervous I feel just now. 1 youth navigator up in Grampian, who's Erica, holding down the fort herself, and 2 within Glasgow. 6 adult navigators over GG&C. This is really stressful because I always feel like I'm going to forget a child when I go through this. That's why that's good that that's up there. 2 in Tayside, 4 in Lanarkshire, 2 in Ayrshire and Arn, and a whole handful of sessional workers that are amazing and really support us when we've got either staff sickness, extra training getting done, or they just want to dip their toe in the water and see what it feels like to come back into the workplace after their own experiences. So our Navigator timeline, as I said, it started originally back 2015, and it was joint at that time with Scottish Violence Reduction Unit. Started off in Glasgow Royal, and that was Alan and Tam, who you've seen in some of the previous pictures. Unfortunately, neither of them could be with us today. They are still alive, and we do still talk to them. It's not like it's not one of the hidden bodies that Christine was talking about. I think Mark's a way to find, actually, because he's gone. Make sure there's none more there. 2016 went into Edinburgh Royal Infirmary. 2018 started in Crosshouse. 19 went into REH in Nine Wells. 2020, Wishaw started in January, and then COVID hit in March. So Caroline, I think, who started with us in Wishaw in January, she did a wee bit of baptism of fire. Either that or she brought about COVID to be off sick for that length of time. I'm not too sure. During COVID, though, we had an amicable divorce from the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit, and we went solely under Medics Against Violence at that time. During COVID, as a lot of people did as well, we also had a COVID baby, which was Youth Navigator. Our COVID baby doesn't bring us as much problems as some other people's COVID babies or people who got kind of puppies at that time as well that are now insane if they get left alone. 2001, we went into Youth Navigator, went into NHS Lothian. Sadly, after an evaluation of all youth services by NHS Lothian, they decided to pull the funding for Youth Navigator and also youth services for children who had terminal cancer. Insane, but again, let's not start about funding today. Thankfully, there is some youth services starting to come back in to NHS Lothian. One of them is delivered by 6VT, which is a really close partner with us, and they are back in the hospital. Because if we think about the young people that Robert, Sean and Callum are trying to, impact and trying to engage through schools, they come into our hospitals as well, so they're absolutely needed there, aren't they? Our last service to start was Youth Navigator up in Aberdeen. And that's going, we're doing okay. Christine did talk a wee bit about getting really big really quickly. And when you see that up there and you see going from 2 staff to 34 staff, you think, oh my God, how did that happen? When I see the pictures of kind of how young and fresh-faced me and Eddie were in the Royal back in the day, and I think now looking in the mirror, you're like, geez, that's how that happened. And that's what happens when you get too big too quickly. Bringing in a CEO last year was phenomenal. Anybody who knows me previously would have thought, why on earth are you asking for a manager that's going to be there every single day? But it's good, and it's not like my manager in social work, who incidentally had a heart attack after I left. Also still alive. So guess what you got coming for you? So who do we support? What do we do? If you think about what can bring somebody into an emergency department, I know we've got some colleagues who are with us today, and Ryan and Kath are going to speak a wee bit after me. Bring somebody into that department, and that's who we support. The funding that we receive from the ADPs, and I'm not being ungrateful or anything like that, but we were very, very driven towards drugs and alcohol, and very, very driven to their commission services, and it wasn't working. We were losing a wee bit of our integrity around about that, and losing a wee bit of our values around about that. So our adult service, there's no upper age limit in our adult service. The oldest person that we've supported was an 84-year-old victim of domestic abuse who'd been living in that situation since her 20s. So if you think about 64 years of living in that. never felt able to engage with anybody, never felt able to disclose or to discuss with anybody. After meeting our lovely Delma, she was able to go on and to speak about an awful lot of things and disclose some things that we all thought, oh, for fuck's sake, where do we go with that? But it's always learning, isn't it? People are coming from all walks of life, and we know through the research, and Ryan will speak about it an awful lot more, that a lot of the people that we're working with do come from, socially deprived areas, or these SIMD indicators, postcodes, which I didn't have a clue what they were about until about 2 years ago, and I now understand that. So it's areas of multiple social deprivation, isn't it? But we're thinking about that, and we think that can happen to anybody. When we think about the problems or the issues that will bring people into the emergency department, it can happen to absolutely anybody. Michelle's got an amazing term that I'm going to steal off her and I'll pay her for later on, and it's from the Chanel suit to the Shell suit. And that's who we're working with. There's no class in there, no. Doesn't domestic abuse, violence, criminality, problematic substance misuse. It cuts across absolutely everything. So we will support an awful lot of people who are either the victim or perpetrator of violence, like we've already mentioned, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, an awful lot of social isolation. Thinking about what Michael was talking about earlier on, about people who are socially isolated and it being as bad as smoking like 20 cigarettes a day. What if you're doing both? It's like, where are we going there, isn't it? And it's that lack of hope that we're talking about here, and that lack of connection, and that lack of not feeling understood or not feeling seen, and the shame that people will carry about with them, isn't it? And it just kind of goes on and on and on. Thinking then about our youth service, and our youth service will work 12 to 16. Biggest kind of referrals that we'll get from that are the young people struggling with poor emotional well-being. And again, that's feeding into, it's evidence in a lot of what Michael was talking about. An awful lot of self-harm and relationship difficulties. So that's relationship difficulties within their home, but within their peer group as well. Thinking about bullying. This sense of gender identity starting to come through really, really strongly with our young people as well. Education and violence. Just not knowing where they fit in their world and not knowing how to connect in their world. Family Navigator is a service that I'll speak a wee bit about that later on. It's jointly funded by the Children's Hospital charity. It's running in the Kids Hospital in Glasgow just now as a pilot for 18 months. And our Family Navigators are there engaging with parents or carers who are coming into the hospital with the child. So they kind of fall between those two things. So it's not the child, because it's generally under 12, and they're not the patient themselves, so they're not really falling into the adult service. This is all primarily around poverty and struggling with the cost of living. The support that they'll offer is immediate, and it's that immediate impact and at that absolute time of crisis. Can access food, can access pyjamas, can access a cash grant as well. Absolutely amazing. Although word did get out in one of the hostels that they could access a cash grant, and all of a sudden there was hundreds of folk turning up with wains. Try to borrow a wain to get to the hospital to get your 50 quid cash grant. That didn't happen. So when we think about it, it's absolutely the kind of the span of a lifetime, and that's who we will work with. Navigator is something that I'll come on to speak a wee bit about, and that's kind of people who are going through maternity services, which is phenomenal, because if we're talking about prevention, that's where we need to be. So what do our navigators do? And that's, again, it's as long as a piece of string, isn't it? So we're absolutely meeting people where they're at. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about the physical. Where are they? Are they in the hospital? Are they in their house? What works best for them? Is it in the community? Is it on the street corners? Trying to empower them. Believe and validate their experiences. It's not for us to judge. What somebody's telling us at that time, that's absolutely what we're going to do. A hell of a lot of advocacy goes on. Some of our team are some of the most strongest advocates for people's rights. Supporting the family is also so important, isn't it? Because for every person who's been a victim, in some of the stats that Mark put up earlier on, and you're looking at that, but for that one person, there's probably about 5 people impacted by that. We can't get the patient, or we can't get engaged with the patient, we'll always target the family, and it's something that we always kind of said to do, not in a bad way or a creepy way or anything like that. Do an awful lot of immediate safety planning, specifically around domestic abuse, and work harm reduction. We'll manage expectations around services. We're not going to say to somebody, I can get you into rehab tomorrow. Or I can actually get you on your choice of mat, because apparently that's not a thing as well. We'll stick with them and we'll roll with the resistance. An awful lot of the people that we support, they've been through services for years, particularly in the adult service. Or even in the kids service, it's like, so are you? Prove to me that you're going to do this. There's no 3 strikes and you're out. And we will not give people suffering and kind of caught up in active addiction appointments at 9 o'clock in the morning, because you're setting them up to fail. We'll always bring our authentic self to it, which sometimes can be really difficult because then you're paying an awful lot of attention to your own well-being, aren't you? We'll always practice with passion and compassion and kindness, and that's something that Father G will speak about an awful lot earlier on, or an awful lot later on today. One of the things that's up in our office is kinship. And I remember when we put kinship up on the wall, people was like, somebody got it like adopting a child, because that's what we thought. And it's no, it's about this kinship, isn't it? Because we're all here and we're all here for the same reasons today. We're all part of humanity. We'll build that therapeutic relationship and a trusting relationship. And sometimes that's about saying no, isn't it? Do you know what I mean to people? I always remember when I worked in social work, somebody once said to me, "You're only as good as your last yes." We're constantly telling the patients yes, yes, yes. Then we're no managing their expectations. And sometimes you need to be told no. That's no, it's not appropriate. We can't do that. We'll be the trusted person within their life, and we'll always encourage and promote their strengths, and we'll try to pick their strengths out, which is a lot of the work that Callum and Sean were talking about. Backed up by quotes, isn't it? Because we all love a quote to put into things. So these are some of the things that came back through. I've got a pathological fear of reading out loud, so I'm not going to read them out loud, but I will leave them up there for you to have a wee look at. Impact interviews that were carried out with the staff in the emergency departments. We know there's so much in the media just now, isn't it, about the pressure that our emergency departments are on. One of the things that came through in some of the evaluations that was done, and we're not a security within the hospitals, but we do have a knack of being able to talk to people, and we've got the time to be able to do that. We don't have the pressures, we're not in the 4-hour window thing, and we don't have anything to offer somebody or any expectations of somebody. We can just be with them at that time while they're in the department. Sometimes that's all it takes to just bring somebody down into it, just to feel believed and validated. A wee cup of tea if they're all right and they're not waiting to get anything done. So thinking then about where we're going. I will call this Mamagator. Christine hates that and she hates Famagator, but I'm like, yes, we'll just have gators everywhere all over the body. So when we're talking about prevention and we're talking about going further upstream, how much further upstream can't we like? So there probably is further upstream, but we'll not go into that today. But let's start in maternity. So we've got a very small pot of funding through Equality and Inclusion by GG&C to run a pilot within maternity. It's based within the RAH hospital and specifically geared towards women who are experiencing domestic abuse through pregnancy, because we know that that can be a time where it goes from emotional abuse, psychological abuse, or violence will start creeping in at that time. We know it's one of our most high-risk times. And if you think about it, I don't have children, don't overly like the wee things either, but the pregnancy should be one of the most beautiful times in your life, so I'm led to believe. If you think about the harm that domestic abuse can cause at that time, it's really important that we're getting in there, isn't it? I always remember somebody saying, when they were asked the question of what could be different for you within your journey, and them saying if my mammy had got help. And that's what we need to look at, isn't it? We need to look at getting into schools, and we need to look at kind of parenting and stuff that Mark was talking about earlier on. So because it is around domestic abuse, this will be staffed by independent domestic abuse advocates, which I am one of. There's another 2 in the room as well. And we're the only 3 based within a health setting in Scotland that will see people face to face. There is some other ones, but it's all of their work is all done on phone. Jen, who's in here, who works with Safe Lives, will probably correct me if I'm wrong, but do that out with. Because at one point we were actually where there was more IDAs by Mav than what there was pandas in Scotland, which was really cool. I love that. Then the pandas went away, so okay, it's great. Family Navigator, which I'd also kind of mentioned earlier on, supporting families and children attending the ED. Ryan will probably touch on this a lot to do with the research and stuff that he's done, and it came. Family Navigator was set up on the back of Ryan's research, so it's really quite nervous actually talking about this, Ryan, in case you're going to throw stuff at me in case I'm totally wrong. And again, it's the time of presentations, isn't it, that people are coming in. So our family navs will work up to 2:00 in the morning. We still see families coming into Glasgow Royal Infirmary because they can't afford to get back from the Children's Hospital, which is absolutely terrible. If you're terrified and you're frightened and you're taking your child to hospital, your consideration should not be how am I getting back home? Or do I need to get up to get bread and milk in the morning? Do you know what I mean? To feed the kids when we're just getting out. This was a quote from one of the ED doctors about the impact a Navigator has brought to them. And it's amazing when you think about that. Especially to say that in this building where it's all about the medical stuff, isn't it, and the clinical stuff. But we need to see people as a whole person and not just as a disease or a condition or a problem to be solved or complex. When it's the systems that don't work. It's not people that are complex, they're just being human. It's the systems that don't work round about them. Good. I don't know what's happened to the tech now, is there?
If anybody wants to ask Geraldine any questions, I'll get her back up. Does anybody want to ask Geraldine any questions? Please, somebody ask her a question. Right, I think. Oh, there we go, Erica. Need to speak into the microphone, Erica, if that's okay.
So the work that you do in the hospital and then the work in the school, would they ever link up?
Yep.
Is that the plan?
An awful lot of the times with the schools or phone from Youth Navigator to where we co-located with the adult service, and it would be a whole family approach. They would bring it in, which is phenomenal when you see that working. And it would be the right people that would deliver that. So whether it would be one Youth Navigator and one Adult Navigator, or an awful lot of referrals are coming from family nav and going into the adult service as well, because there's a bigger realisation. It's not just about they can't afford to pay their bills, it's what's causing that. And the kind of the other issues that's going on within that household, so we would pick that up.
It's just those courses that Callum and that were doing. I know, like with the young people I've worked with, they would benefit from something like that. But there's not, so something you would look into. Perfect.
Sorry, I'm nodding at the man at the back. Sorry, in case you think I'm going a bit mad here. Thank you. Thank you, Geraldine. That was brilliant.